Story 1. Be mindful of those who come to water the soil and those who come to pick the fruit. I was ignorant most of my life and kept company that never challenged me to grow or improve as a person or were bad influences. After hearing this, I have been very careful about who I keep close. You also learn that although people may truly want to water the soil, some are simply unable to. Story 2. I once told a coworker during break that I couldn't wait until Friday to be off work. It was only Tuesday. Her response was, "Isn't it a shame how we wish our lives away?" In that moment, my entire view of life changed. I realized that I defined every day that I worked as a bad day instead of focusing on what I could enjoy each day. I think of that interaction often. Story 3. You are being made redundant because the company is ceasing trading. I had been there for 14 years. I received 14 weeks of wages as redundancy pay, which gave me time to evaluate what I wanted to do with my life. I decided to try early years education, as I thought it would be something I would enjoy and be good at. Turns out I absolutely love it. I have been doing it for over 10 years now, and there is no better job. The children love me. Some parents thought it was unusual having a man in preschool. Others know I am great. Every July, I send a group of children off to primary school knowing that I have done my best for them. Story 4. We need to talk about your drinking. I signed up for rehabilitation shortly after that conversation and am coming up on 6 years sober. Story 5. If you cannot truthfully say, "I like myself best when I am with you," in a relationship, you are in the wrong relationship. Story 6. I had been out of an abusive relationship and was seeing someone new. My abusive ex was getting out of jail, and as often happens with abused people, I was really convinced I had to go back to him. I had all these reasons. He wouldn't be a father to the kids if I left. He would never leave me alone, and he would make both our lives miserable. The guy I was seeing said, "Forget him. We got this. I'll love your kids." I was really drunk, sitting on my sofa crying, and I said, "Forget it. Come get me." And he did. That was 15 years ago. I am still blissfully happy with him. The ex is back in prison. I think he just made parole. We don't hear from him when he is out either, other than an occasional message that implies I am being childish by not messaging him back. I ignore those. Story 7. Conversation with my therapist. Me. I just can't help feeling like I'm a bad person. Her. Okay. Describe to me what you think a bad person is. Me. Well, someone mean, rude, selfish, and you can't trust them with anything. Obviously hateful and bigoted. I don't know, just generally unpleasant. Her. And are you like that? Me. Well, no. Her. So how can you be a bad person if, by your own definition, a bad person is the complete opposite of you? This completely changed how I see myself. I'm not a bad person. Story 8. You have stage 4B T-cell lymphoma. I almost died waiting for that diagnosis. I am 43 years old. That was when I was 18. Every day since then has been affected in some way by it. 24 years in remission as well. Story 9. Every person is worrying about the same self-conscious things you are stressing about. So if they are stressing about themselves, then they are not thinking about you or what you are doing. My psychology professor in college told me that. Changed my entire life. I no longer cared about what other people thought of me or worried about doing something embarrassing because I knew that they had their own problems and were too caught up to think about me. Story 10. Closed mouths don't get fed. I have gotten so far in my life simply by asking. The worst they can say is no. Story 11. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what is left and live it properly. This has helped me through many things in life when facing stressful or uncomfortable situations. I always tell myself I have just been given a second chance. Now do it the right way. Story 12. When my psychologist said, "You are not paranoid if you are right," I stopped letting myself be manipulated by my then partner. Story 13. I love it here. I said this to my lecturer in college when I returned as an adult. Fast forward 1 or 2 years, and the principal at the college called and offered me a job as a lecturer. That was 12 years ago, and I still love it. Story 14. The test results came back positive for colon cancer almost exactly a year ago today. It was caught early. I nearly died during surgery. I no longer have a colon and live with an ileostomy. But here I am, still alive. Get your colonoscopies, everyone. Story 15. Worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do but does not get you anywhere. Write that down. Van Wilder, Ryan Reynolds. Story 16. You cannot pour from an empty cup. It may be perimenopause as well, but my habit of helping everyone else first has gone. I deserve to enjoy my day and look after myself, not sacrifice my well-being all the time. Story 17. I should have left you in foster care to get abused like you deserve. My grandmother said this to me after accusing me of trying to take her husband, my grandfather. Why? I cooked dinner for him as she asked and cleaned the house. I was living with them and paying rent while working full-time. I was their live-in nurse, maid, and cook. I put up with it for years because they raised me, and I felt I owed it to them. I was helping pay their mortgage. This sentence made me realize I had to leave. I worked and saved to get out of there and never looked back. Story 18. Why are you putting up with it if you would not do it to yourself? Something my therapist said to me. Story 19. Babe, you do not want him. You want him to want you. This was said to me when I was in the middle of treacherous heartbreak. She was right. Story 20. If being mean to yourself would do something, it would have worked already. I read that on Reddit some time ago, and I actually stopped talking down to myself. Story 21. He who has a why can bear anyhow. It was a wake-up call for me to find my why and discover purpose, meaning, and direction in life during my dazed and lost phase. Story 22. Words from my therapist. Just because you can explain their behavior does not mean you should excuse their behavior. That is when I started making plans to leave my abusive ex. Story 23. I miss you more when you are here than when you are gone. It really put my relationship into perspective. Story 24. Thank you, random Tumblr stranger, for saying this. You only think you are ugly because you are not your type. Story 25. Do not complain about the darkness if you are not willing to light a candle. Respect for self. Respect for others. Responsibility for all your actions. Story 26. Every time he went to a gas station, he could not help but buy beer, so he learned to avoid gas stations. This is the idea that helped me lose a lot of weight. Identify the triggers of the habits you want to avoid, and find ways to avoid those triggers. Story 27. The more someone can anger you, the more they can control you. Do you want to give someone that kind of control? My foster father was a very gentle man, but he had no issues sharing wisdom directly. My boyfriend at the time had forgotten our anniversary, and I was utterly enraged. I had spent the day cleaning our shared house, making his favorite meal and more, and my dad said that to me, completely changed how I view my own anger and actions. Story 28. I was at a job for a little over a decade, and it had been hit and miss how miserable the job was. The company was great, but the manager was terrible. I was on the phone with my mom complaining about my boss making me do something in a roundabout way. I said, I can't believe I have to answer to this guy. Somehow, he has been my boss for like 10 years. Mom said, just quit the job, because I don't want to hear you complaining for the next 10 years. I quit, and things did not go well. I was unemployed for over half the year. Then I found a better paying and closer job, which I had for a while, and now I am back to bouncing around. No matter though, I now have what I guess you would call the courage to quit toxic jobs. Story 29. A toss-up between that's future me's problem and not my circus, not my monkeys, and every variation of that. Story 30. You put boundaries in place to protect the relationship. This means keeping people at a distance where you can still love them, but no closer. I alleviated a lot of guilt by pushing my family away. I am able to love them still because they are not on top of me like they used to be. Any closer and I would grow to resent them. This is also true of romantic relationships. If I can tell that someone being my romantic partner erodes the relationship between us, and reparation does not work, then I break up. I have found that my breakups are much less messy, and it is much easier to transition to friendship than when I dragged it out because of guilt or a sense of duty. Story 31. I was in my 20s working as a bouncer, a stagehand, and involved in a few minor questionable enterprises. The club I worked at was closing down, and we felt like a family. The manager was there with me and my best friend, who ran the security team with me, after the club had closed. He was at his desk counting the tills and was clearly distraught. My friend and I were hanging around his office door, and the manager was muttering almost to himself, but we could hear him. Then he said something that changed my perspective. The club is closing. What are these guys going to do? You don't really have any marketable skills. Those words became the turning point that started driving my life. I now run a small manufacturing plant for a major water sports company with 4 employees. I design all the high-end water skis for the company, design the molds and program and operate the CNC machines that make the molds and cores. I completely own my product from start to finish. Now, I have marketable skills. Story 32. No good deed goes unpunished. This is not a very positive outlook, but it often rings true, especially in customer service or company representative roles. My advice is not to overextend yourself for a stranger, acquaintance, or even loved one unless you are sure there will be no repercussions. Consider how you can protect yourself first from potential issues, even if you have to fight against your morals and nature to help someone in need. Underpromise and overdeliver always. Unfortunately, this lesson can only be learned the hard way because humans are social creatures. Story 33. The days are long and the years are short. Someone told me this when I became a parent. It has helped me gain perspective when the days seem too long and also appreciate that the years will indeed fly by if you do not try to live intentionally. Story 34. I first read Ringworld when I was about 14, and Louis Wu saying more than once, "I have to get over this sometime, it may as well be now," has stuck with me still at 46. Actually, now that I think about it, that mantra may have been in the sequel. But yes, it stuck. Story 35. I don't care about it for me. I care about it for you. This is in reference to how I often suffer in silence. A good friend and I were having a talk about how I get in my own head. She has been the only person in a long time with whom I have felt deeply connected, which leads me to take what she says to heart. She knew about essentially everything because depression gets really bad. I've had people say the regular, "I'm here for you if you need to talk," and the like, but nothing like this. It was the first time in a long time I felt truly cared for. Story 36. The signs you ignore in the beginning become the reasons you leave later. Just remember, choosing a life partner should not be a fun or good enough decision. In a controversial opinion, people can change, but if you are relying on that happening, you are putting yourself in a bad position. Story 37. The hardest thing about being a parent is being the person you want your children to grow up to be. It was on the dedication page of a parenting book I started to read. I do not remember anything else from the book. Story 38. I was in 10th grade and had no idea what I wanted to do for college, but I thought I had time, so no worries. I had to give a presentation on a social issue for my community service class. I did it on homelessness, and apparently, I gave such a great presentation that I received a genuine ovation. One girl told me, "You are really good at public speaking. You should be a lawyer." That stuck with me, and I started going down that path because it gave me direction. Eventually, it became a real desire, and I just graduated this May. So, thanks for that. Story 39. People are mostly good. I feel like it is a very layered set of 4 words. We see so much awful because awful is what gets the headlines and people raising a stink. Most lovely things happen in a closed environment behind closed doors, and if not, usually do not grab a headline. It tells me that people as a whole, though incredibly flawed in many ways, and individuals on an individual basis who have the capacity for both decency and evil, mostly choose decency even if it goes mostly unnoticed. It is very easy, especially currently, to be disheartened with people in general. Most of them are struggling to find a way to put love into the world while facing many challenges, and many of us simply do not see it. But it is there, and those people have the resolve not to give up on love and beauty in the face of indecency and hate. I am very happy someone once said those 4 words to me because they absolutely changed my life. Story 40. If I am not on the list of people you are involved with, then who is on the list is not my business. Story 41. I stayed up to make sure you were safe. I thought I was hiding the abuse from my children, but they knew. Story 42. You do not have to be like your mother. That is when I realized I had a choice and could be whoever I wanted to be. Story 43. What if he had laughed too? As a child, my father had done something a little embarrassing, and I laughed, drawing attention to it. He reacted by getting overly angry and literally kicking me in the butt. Here I am, in my 50s, relating this to my therapist, and she asked that question. It was a watershed moment in my therapy. It was the first time I truly recognized the pain I had endured as a child. Story 44. You really think the power you hold over other people's lives makes up for what you lack in your own? Jensen Ackles. Story 45. Be kind to the people you meet on your way up, because you will meet the same people on your way down. I read this in a Hagar the Horrible comic strip when I was around 13 or 14. Story 46. It's a song lyric. I didn't know I was broken till I wanted to change from I Want to Get Better by the band Bleachers. Those words clicked in my head and made me take my issues with alcohol seriously. They helped me understand that my inability to stop easily did not make me inhuman. Story 47. The person you spend the most time with in life is yourself. So make yourself as interesting as possible. It reminds me to always take opportunities and try new things. Hobbies, food, travel. Always learn something new. Story 48. It only spends once. When I had my first big girl job and received a good-sized tax refund, I was rattling off all the foolish things I was going to buy with it. My grandmother reached over, put her hand on my arm, and said that to me. It hit me, and I have repeated it to myself 1,000 times since. I think that one sentence is why I could buy a nice house at 27 and have a credit rating of 820. Thank you, grandmother. I miss you every day. Story 49. We cannot see past the choices we do not understand. This is very helpful in understanding fundamental differences between people's perspectives and why people have polarizing views when looking at the same things. Story 50. Go easy with yourself. This was said by a very kind colleague I met in Saudi Arabia. He was always smiling, and his calm demeanor and positive aura changed the mood of every shift I had with him. He may have felt that I was struggling during my first few months adjusting to the culture and workplace pressure as a trainee. I will never forget him. I was devastated by his passing before I resigned. He died from Ebola when he visited his father in Africa. Thank you, my dear friend. Story 51. It's too late, he passed away. I was waiting, as I usually did, for my partner to call me when he was done with work and on the way home. Instead, my mom called. For some reason, my partner hadn't filled out his emergency contact information, and his work was trying to reach me about a medical emergency he was having. I was prepared to tell them about the medical issue he had been having recurrently and ask them to connect me to whoever was helping him. I wasn't prepared for the response that I got. 11 years of being together, and I never imagined this could have happened before we fulfilled all the plans we had made for our life together. I don't know how I summoned the strength to do it, but I called his parents frantically and drove to his work. When the police officer started talking to me, it was like I actually registered it for the first time and collapsed on the ground. We stayed with his body as long as they would let us before the coroner took him. That night is burned into my head for eternity. Now I'm alone in the world, besides my beloved cats. I miss him. Every day, I miss him more than seems possible. Story 52. Progress, not perfection. That sentence really helped me focus on growth instead of getting stuck trying to be perfect. Story 53. That is not my sin. I'm not religious myself, but this is something my grandmother would say whenever someone gave her a hard time about giving money to a homeless person. Someone would tell her, "You know they're just going to buy drugs with that money." Her response would always be, "That is not my sin." I've caught myself using that exact phrase in a few different contexts. It has always inspired me to unapologetically do kind deeds. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Story 54. The definition of hell is your last day on earth. The person you became meets the person you could have become. Dan Sulifan. Story 55. The thing that takes off the edge also takes off the shine. It made me slow down on my drinking to take off the edge when I realized I was drinking beyond a typical healthy amount for me. Story 56. Today my boyfriend told me he picked up his ex, drove around town, and told her he still loved her last night. Not life-changing, but certainly caught me off guard. Whoops. Story 57. You do not deserve to be spoken to like that. My therapist said this to me about my siblings and parents after hearing yet another story. It broke me, and I realized that no, I did not deserve to be spoken to the way I had been for so long. It completely changed my perspective and gave me the strength to put space between my family of origin and me. It has been so much better since then. Story 58. Mom said, there is going to be a difficult person everywhere you go. I have found this to be true. In every group of coworkers, every neighborhood, every church congregation I have ever been a part of, there has been at least one. I remind myself of what Mom said and realize this person will probably never be my friend, and that is probably a good thing. Story 59. I was working in a dead-end, low-paying, no-benefits, toxic job with people in their 20s to late 40s. One of my colleagues asked, "What do you want out of your life?" I answered, break down the steps you need to take to achieve your goals and estimate how long each will take. My answer was unclear. I didn't have a solid plan, and for some things I had no idea. C. If you don't create a plan to reach your goals, I plan on seeing you here in the same spot for years to come. Story 60. I was with a man who had explosive anger issues and was very disrespectful. One day, I woke him up to ask what time he had to be at work so I could set an alarm, and he lost his temper. He called the police on me and told them I was harassing him. I called my dad, who arrived at the same time as the police. We explained what happened, and the officers talked to him. I was a mess. I foolishly loved him and wouldn't make him leave. My dad grabbed my shoulders, looked me in the eyes and said, "He doesn't love you. Someone who loves you wouldn't treat you like this." Such a simple sentence, but coming from him, a dad who supported every one of my bad decisions, let me learn the hard way and helped me get back up when they failed. I knew it was serious. Story 61. The moment you realize nobody cares about you, you will start to not care about what people think of you. For those who really struggle with social anxiety, as I have and still occasionally do. Story 62. Life begins outside your comfort zone. I never really believed that a line could change a person's outlook on life, but having somebody casually say this to me opened up something inside. To this day, I have let it guide and push me forward. Story 63. You are the captain of your own ship. I was between jobs, living on a friend's couch, and I worked with an older man who had been homeless in his younger years. I used to vent to him about my problems. In summary, people can ask things of you, imply, resent, or have entitlement. But at the end of the day, it is I who makes the last call. It really opened my eyes to how much power I have over my life. Thanks, Bob, if you are reading this. Story 64. More advice I received from a woman while I was an undergraduate student. We were outside City College in New York City, sitting on a bench, and she said, "See that dog that just took a walk? Watch what he's going to do. See that? He kicked it behind him and never looked back. That is my advice to you. Learn to leave things behind and never look back." Story 65. You are not a bad person. You just made a bad choice. Believe it or not, this is from my 8-year-old. I was driving. I live in a suburb area with no sidewalks on the main roads. Just trees until you get about 5 miles away from my neighborhood. I never pull over crosswalks, but I also rarely see anyone walking here. One morning, I realized I had pulled over the crosswalk, just as I saw a high school-aged child walking across the street on his way to the high school a few miles away. I felt awful that I had blocked part of his path, and I said, "Oh man, I am an awful person." My child replied like a small, female Ron Swanson, "No, Mommy, you are not a bad person. You just made a bad choice." I realized how many times in my life that could apply, and I let some things slide off my shoulders. Story 66. It's your fault. From my mother to me at my sister's grave. She died by suicide at 16. That was the last time I spoke face to face with my mother. This was over 25 years ago. My mother has several grandchildren she has never and will never meet if I have any say about it. Story 67. My high school boyfriend said, I slept with Kim, who was a close friend. 2 years later, I met the man of my dreams. We will be married 29 years this fall. Story 68. I remember wanting to get into education to be a teacher. I did not really want to be a teacher. I wanted to get into film. Then I saw Good Will Hunting, and he says a line, maybe I do not want to spend the rest of my life explaining things to people. I heard that and said, yeah, that sounds horrible. I majored in film and am working in film now. Story 69. My mother, when I was about 8 or 9, said, I'm sorry, but you are so unattractive that I just cannot love you. I am a man, and this has been stuck in my mind ever since. I am indeed unattractive, but it still hurts. Story 70. My teacher in 7th grade told me, I believe in you and can see sparks of a genius hiding behind that disinterested facade. No one had ever said that to me. I started to ace everything, excelled in my profession, changed the trajectory of my life, and never looked back. Now, approaching 60 and at the top of my field, I hope I am able to pay it forward. Story 71. And I heard the voice of the Lord say, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And I heard my voice say, here am I. Send me. I am not religious anymore. But this has been a message of courage and boldness for much of my life. Instead of asking who is going to intervene and stop this injustice, be bold and be the one who rises to the occasion. Story 72. You need to change now. You are like an oil tanker headed for the rocks. Turning around will not be easy, but you have to start before time runs out. This sentence hit like a semi-trailer hitting a sedan on a random Saturday afternoon. Story 73. You are overweight and need to take action to improve your health, or you may face serious consequences. I was in my 50s, and no doctor had ever expressed concern about my weight before. This was the allergist. It was a wake-up call, and since then, I have lost 65 pounds. Story 74. People can only do what makes them happy. I heard this in 2020. It is empowering. I also only do what makes me happy and calming. I do not yearn for people's actions or words to align with my own because they are only going to do what they want. So what is the point in wasting energy on it? Just allow people to be. Story 75. You don't find time, you make time. If you are genuinely passionate about doing something, you will make the time for it to happen. Story 76. Your son is not going to survive this, said the doctor performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation on my neonatal intensive care unit baby. He was right. My baby died. My experience with my pregnancy and his birth made me decide I needed to do something more with my life. I was working in phone customer service at the time, which was my only work experience. I left it, went to nursing school, earned my bachelor's degree, worked in a hospital, then obtained my master's degree in nursing. Now, I am a nurse practitioner. Everything changed. Story 77. I used to work for a music producer in Los Angeles. He would bring me in for session piano and vocals, and I played in his then-girlfriend's band. We were hanging out one day when, out of nowhere, he said, you know what your problem is? You suck at listening to your inner voice. I think about that every single day. It changed my habits profoundly. I am constantly asking myself now what my inner voice is telling me to do. Within a year of him telling me that, I quit my programming job and played music full-time. Story 78. My Spanish teacher is like our class's dad, and one day he was giving us a life lesson. He told us how he used to tussle back then and get into some fights. He said his teacher gave him advice that made him stop and think, once you're knocked unconscious, your body is no longer yours. I already knew that, but it is one of those things you really need to hear for it to sink in. Story 79. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. This is where you are learning something new or growing as a person. You will get through uncomfortable situations and connect with people more by understanding new points of view. Story 80. You have no need to be envious of anyone. You are special and amazing as you are. Never forget that. My theater teacher said this to me after we did presentations on emotions. I had picked envy and talked about how I hated myself and wanted to be someone else. He died of cancer the day after September 11th. I have a memorial tattoo on my forearm for him, an E for envy, to always remember his encouraging words as I battled suicidal thoughts and self-harm. He will never know how those words have stayed with me my entire life. Rest in peace, Mr. Neisler. Story 81. Your son has shattered the fifth cervical vertebra in his neck and has also suffered spinal cord damage. He needs surgery as soon as possible, and we have contacted Royal Perth Hospital. My son had just turned 15 and dove into water, hitting a sandbar. I hear this sentence every minute of every day. Story 82. Say what you mean what you say. It was the motto of our journalism class in high school. It was the most important lesson in integrity. Almost a year ago, I cut my finger on the table saw and had to go to the emergency room. I ran into my journalism teacher who was there too. He was 91 and there to make sure he had no internal bleeding from a fall. I had been thinking about how much that sentence from his class meant to me and how much I wished I could tell him. Then I got the chance. After being numbed from the pain and waiting for stitches, I thanked him for changing many young people's lives by giving them the opportunity to understand what integrity really is. It made us both tear up. I was so glad to have nearly cut off a finger. Story 83. Anthony Bourdain said, "You do not make a living by poisoning your neighbors." This completely changed my worldview on food, especially small family-owned restaurants and street food vendors. I used to avoid these places when I was young, but now if I see a taco truck or a hot dog cart in a parking lot, I get something. The best meal I have ever had was street tacos in Tijuana. Story 84. Wait, so why do you want to be a lawyer again? My best friend asked me this a few months before I graduated with my undergraduate degree after I was accepted into several law schools. I had no answer, no direction, nothing. I had changed my major 5 times in college, so I just chose lawyer because it seemed like the default. I told him I would have an answer next time, but I didn't. I turned down every offer. I am glad I did. Story 85. You are what saved me. I was very suicidal, and I hadn't told anyone. I was talking with my mom, and she had told me in the past that she was suicidal. This time, she opened up a lot more and said she was going to kill herself. Then she found out she was pregnant with me. She said, "You were what saved me. You made me feel like I had a purpose." After that, I decided to try and change things in my life so I could stay with my mom. Story 86. I was 16, hiding and crying in a coat closet at school. I had been betrayed by both my parents again. They both kicked me out of their homes. I was terrified and didn't know what to do. I was brutally bullied daily at school. Overall, I was alone and just a kid. One of the school counselors found me, and I remembered his words, his voice, and his lack of empathy for the overdramatic girl. He seriously didn't see anything wrong with what he did next. I was told word for word, "You need to suck it up and stop acting like this. It's embarrassing. Everyone has problems, and I guarantee they are much bigger and more important than yours. You don't see anyone else crying in a closet. Now get up and go to class." I never went back to that school after that day. Instead, I started working 3 jobs at once and moved in with my 23-year-old boyfriend into his mother's basement. I internalized a lot of the horrible, traumatic things said to me about me and at me. This influenced my very low self-esteem, which as a 28-year-old woman with my own daughter, I have fought to correct in the last few years. The moral of the story: stop being an ass. Stop assuming that all kids or teens who are acting up or having a medical issue are lying or being dramatic. Give them a chance to let their brain catch up. Seriously, you all aren't better than anyone, and no one's problems are more important. Some just take priority or require a different level of understanding. Story 87. I had severe depression and deep trauma coming out of a 5-year relationship. Dad said, "My sweet pumpkin, how can I live knowing you are not happy?" Story 88. Think about what your enemies or haters would be thinking or saying if they saw you down. Do not give them the satisfaction. Story 89. You can make more money, but you cannot make more time. I do not even remember where I read that on the internet years ago, but it guides most of my work-related decisions to this day. Story 90. Emotional intimacy cannot be forced. It has to be built over time. Someone worth getting to know is willing to take the time. My therapist. Story 91. Time is going to pass regardless, so what are you going to do with that time? My mom tells me this often. I am a graduate student with 2 children under 2 years old and want to drop out all the time. But I think about my mom's sentence constantly and tell myself it will be worth it if I stick it out. If I drop out now, then in 2 years I will not be getting ready to graduate. Keep on moving forward in life, even if it is tough. Story 92. Just because someone desires you does not mean they value you. It hit hard and made me rethink every relationship, every friendship, and how I saw myself in other people's eyes. It taught me to stop mistaking attention for respect. Story 93. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. People know themselves much better than you do. Story 94. I was 19. Mid-argument, my dad said, "If you don't finish university, you'll screw up your life and end up in a warehouse." Boom. So I did what any dramatic, slightly furious kid would do. I wrote it down, time-stamped it, filed it away like evidence in a trial I'd one day win. I still have it. Was he trying to hurt me? No. After a decade, I can say no. Just his weird boot camp version of love. An ego boost by fear. I get it. I'm not mad. Just still a bit tight in the chest thinking about it. I know he wants the best for me. He just has a hard time showing it. Did I deliberately quit university anyway? Hell yes. Did I end up in a warehouse? No. I ended up with freedom, money, not millionaire level yet, but in the global top 5% and growing, an amazing future wife, stories from half the world, and a life that feels mine. So thanks, Dad. I have told him this already a few times. His threat turned out to be the best anti-motivation I ever got. Story 95. I can't remember the exact sentence, but I used to struggle heavily with binge eating. I read the book Brain Over Binge. The author stated at the end that she no longer had a struggle with binge eating, but would sometimes binge as a part of life, like overeating on a holiday or at a party. The sentiment that I could be healed and still have some moments of weakness and not fall back into my pattern of binging several times a week really helped me realize I was getting better. Recovery is not linear. It's hard when the thing you're addicted to is something you also need to live. Sometimes eating a lot is necessary, and as long as you aren't doing it all the time, it's okay. Story 96. Once I failed, and someone said to me, "Did you not try hard enough? Do you think your effort was enough?" After I worked so hard and failed. Since then, I never felt like I tried enough at anything in my life. I always feel like I have not pushed myself to the limit and I keep pushing. Sometimes it is a good feeling, sometimes it lowers your self-esteem a bit. Story 97. You can trust them to be who they are. My parents separated when I was little, and when my dad died by suicide in my early 20s, my mom criticized him, telling me he was still a coward and sharing stories about how awful he was. When her first husband died, he would spend the night after my parents separated since she worked nights and needed help getting us to and from school. She went on the same tirade. I was hurt by how she chose to comfort her grieving children. But my boyfriend said, "You can trust her to be who she is." This applies to quite a few people. A mistake is a mistake, but a behavior is a behavior. Story 98. I was arguing with my mother and said, "Give me a break." She said, "You know what? You make your own breaks." Stuck like glue. Story 99. Nobody makes you angry. You choose to let yourself get angry. It made me realize that the only thing I can control is myself and my reactions. Story 100. Do what you always do, get what you always got. What you permit, you promote. Poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. Story 101. When thinking about life, I remember this. No amount of guilt can change the past, and no amount of anxiety can change the future. Story 102. Do not stop being the kind person you are just because someone treated you badly. It is a choice to stop being kind. Story 103. People who are afraid of change do not grow. Change is not a choice. I do not know how or why, but this stuck with me deeply. Change used to stress me out a lot. But why let it? It is going to happen no matter what. I applied this concept to work, and guess what? 3 promotions within 1.5 years. Managers do not like to promote people who complain about change. They prefer to promote those who adapt to it. Best lesson learned so far. Story 104. What if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? Hit so profoundly that I got it tattooed on me. A permanent reminder that sometimes you have to take that leap, even if it scares me. Story 105. A smart person knows they can be wrong. A less knowledgeable person believes they are always right. This made me question things and not trust everything I was told, which turned out to be very helpful. Story 106. How you felt about her did not come from her. All of those feelings came from you, and you will feel them again. These words came from my mom when I broke up with my first girlfriend. Realizing that my love for her was entirely mine, a product of my own mind and body, really helped me get over it. Breakups still hurt for me, but they are easier. Thanks, Mom. Story 107. You can stop yourself from spiraling, catch yourself when you are caught in the negative loop, and break it. My ex told me this when I was struggling. He cared about me, but we were really toxic together. Story 108. You're a mess, original poster. Undiagnosed mania and depression ravage my body. No sense of self. Although we aren't friends anymore, she was right. I started therapy and got properly diagnosed. I am also learning about myself. I'll finish my 20s strong. Story 109. Touch is not your love language. Your love language is taking care of people, and you are touch-starved. My new girlfriend said this to me after just a couple of months of dating. I do not know why, but this hit me really hard. Lack of touch had been such a core part of my difficult marriage, and this person had seen through all my hang-ups and issues. I did not even know I had to recognize something about me I was unaware of. I think I fell in love with them that day. Story 110. You deserve the kind of love that does not leave your heart undelivered and does not make you feel small for caring. I felt that. Story 111. Honey, feelings are not right or wrong, they just are. That helped me after I felt apologetic for having feelings about a normal situation that caused me to be upset. I spent too much time, including sometimes now, being apologetic for something I should not be, like my feelings in logically and rationally appropriate situations. I am working on not suppressing them so much anymore. Story 112. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. Viktor Frankl. Story 113. You're an adult now. You don't need permission. At the time, I was very enmeshed with my parents and struggled to do anything I thought they wouldn't like, such as therapy or medication. I was talking to a school counselor and she said that it was like a switch flipped. I could, legally speaking, do whatever I wanted without needing permission. I could get a tattoo, start medication, or work outside of the family business. It was something I sincerely needed to hear, and I'm grateful to her for helping me realize I can live for myself. Story 114. Is there any domestic abuse in the home? A standard question asked at a routine appointment by a midwife when I became pregnant with my second child. I paused for a moment as my eyes glanced over a leaflet pinned to the wall behind her. It was about abuse. Without thinking, I said yes. She looked caught off guard, but immediately referred me to Women's Aid. After a full year of their guidance, creating a secret plan to keep us safe, and quietly applying for housing, I left when my baby was 5 months old. Story 115. Life got better when I realized I did not want to be a nice person. Being nice had caused me stress and disrespect. Now I am a good person and authentic. There is a difference. Story 116. Your parents are living their lives for the first time too. This really puts things in perspective. I was 21. Story 117. Do not focus too much on finding the meaning of your art. Creating something that did not exist before is meaningful enough in itself. Story 118. Give a man a fish and you feed him for the day. Feed a man a poisoned fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Story 119. It's breast cancer. Just like that, my life has changed forever. People don't tell you about the aftereffects of cancer. Sure, you hear about how awful chemotherapy is and how you'll feel sick and how painful the radiation is. You don't hear about how all the multiple surgeries change your body structure and musculature. Did you know that cancer can trigger fibromyalgia? I didn't, and it took 5 years of tests, scans, and different specialists to tell me that. It's such a cop-out diagnosis. Basically, they can't figure out what's wrong with you, so they just lump you in with fibromyalgia. I'll never know if they gave up or if this is truly my diagnosis. Story 120. Always be prepared for change. Sometimes it happens instantly, and other times it comes gradually. Story 121. I have two. Do not stress about things until you actually have a reason to stress about them. Put mind over matter. Story 122. You will not be able to walk again. I am sorry. After I broke my back as a teenager, thankfully they were wrong, but it was a rough 18 months of recovery. Story 123. Jealousy does not make you a bad person. It makes you human. These words were said to me after I was upset with myself for feeling jealous about something good that came into my friend's life. Story 124. My soon-to-be wife, once during a low point when we broke up and spent time apart, told me if I wanted to, I would. She was my first real and honest relationship after separation and divorce. Her words hit my soul like a gong, and I went about fixing myself. I reached out when I had my life together, and here we are 7 months later. Story 125. Watch out. You need to be careful. I was suicidal on a hike alone. It just wasn't meant to be that day, I guess. It was winter, and the road there was unexpectedly closed. When I finally got to the trail near a really steep off-trail ledge, an older man appeared out of nowhere and said that. I never even heard him approach. The snow was coming down heavily, and the view was so beautiful that I think I didn't pay attention to anything else besides the view and my own thoughts. Story 126. If you spend all your time looking forward to the future, you will end up missing out on every today you live. Story 127. If I let the people I love treat me poorly, what will I allow my enemies to do to me? If I did not break the relationship, why should I try to fix it? Story 128. A Bible verse here. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9. This helped me put my depressive and intrusive thoughts into perspective. I may have wanted to die, but there are bigger things out there. Why make such a permanent act over some small stuff I'm dealing with? God's thoughts, the future and the meaning I hope to find in life one day, are not my thoughts, which include depression and thoughts of harming myself. My thoughts are small, distressing, but small. Story 129. Whether you believe you can or you believe you cannot, you are right. Also, something that took me until quite late to realize is that nothing lasts forever. When you lose something, it is okay. Story 130. This is the best part of my job, handing me keys to my new apartment, taking me away from the stalker I have been dealing with for 7 months. Story 131. Early 20s working a dead-end job with a good friend I have known since kindergarten. The day ends and he says, another 40 or so years and we can retire. That night, I started looking into college programs. Story 132. Anything with a mouth can bite you. Taught me to treat all animals with respect. Story 133. Something terrible happened to me involving my mom's ex-boyfriend. I am a girl, so you can guess what happened. My friend Ben picked me up from the side of a street near our houses. I cried in his arms, telling him to take me to the police station. Before we went in, I started second-guessing what I should do. I told him how I felt like I was being selfish, like I could ruin the lives of my two younger siblings. They need their father in their lives, and I feared I could ruin that for them. I tried to get him to take me back to the terrible house I had to call home, but he looked me in the eyes and told me, "Gracie, you are the most caring and loving person I've ever met. I understand why you don't want to do this. You're scared of ruining your younger siblings' lives, but you're just being selfish to yourself if you don't. He has made life hell for you from the moment he stepped into it. Now you're going to be the bigger person. You'll get your life back. And I don't know if you're scared people won't believe you, but I believe you." I know that's not a perfect sentence, but my friend Ben saying that he believes me changed my life. My mom's ex was proven guilty and is now in jail for 6 years. I thank Ben all the time. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.